So Jeffrey Epstein's accuser, Virginia Giuffre, I think that's how you say it, Giuffre, um, has made a lot of news in just recent weeks. So to remind people, let's take a step back in time just to show kind of the developing events that happened just in a matter of weeks. So at the beginning of April, it was announced that Virginia Giuffre, uh, what we know about Virginia Giuffre's health condition after high-speed crash with bus. Local media reported Virginia Giuffre has been discharged from hospital after spending 6 nights there. So what happened was that she was driving along a street in Australia. That's where she's living now. And the school bus, she was turning onto a street, and the school bus came out of nowhere driving at very ridiculous high speed. I think it was like 110 kilometers per hour, which is 70 miles. I think that's the conversion there, which is very fast for a school bus. And this is just a local street. This is not like a highway. The school bus came out of nowhere, drove into Virginia's car. She got hit by the school bus. She ended up in hospital, badly bruised. The doctors told her that she only had a couple days to live because of how serious the situation is. But then she recovered. That was the story at the beginning of the month. And here's Yahoo News to report this. So Virginia Giuffre has been discharged from hospital a week after being involved in a car crash and posting on social media that she only had days to live. Local media has reported. The Western Australia said Giuffre had been discharged on Monday from Sir Charles Garnier Hospital in Perth after spending 6 nights there. She has since she had only 4 days to live on March 30th. Giuffre has been backed in the media spotlight. Giuffre said she in the post on March 30th that her car had been hit by a school bus. She uploaded a picture of herself with bruised and battered face alongside the details of the crash and said she had renal kidney failure. However, Western Australia police raised questions about Giuffre's original post after issuing a statement casting the incident as a minor crash with no reported injuries. Towards the end of last week, Giuffre's brother said injuries described by her sister were not necessarily linked to a car crash. So this was a major scandal. This was a huge major scandal. And even to this day, I'm still scratching my head on this. Because a school bus that came out of nowhere, going to 110 kilometers an hour, rams this woman's car. She ends up in the hospital, badly bruised. She has this kidney failure. The doctors tell her she only has days to live. But all of a sudden, she gets out of office. She gets out of the hospital. And her brother is saying that the kidney failure is not the result of the car crash. So that's very suspicious. That's very suspicious. So here's the post here that she made on her Instagram account. And she says, "This year has been the worst start to a new year, but I won't bore anyone with the details. But I think it is important to know that when a school bus driver comes at you driving 110 kilometers as we were slowing for a turn, that no matter what your car is made of, it might as well have been a tin can. I've gone into kidney renal failure. They've given me 4 days to live, transferring me to a specialist hospital in urology. I'm ready to go, just not until I see my babies one last time. But you know what they say about wishes. Shit in one hand and wish in the other. I guarantee it's going to be shit at the end of the day. Thank you all for being the wonderful people of the world and for being a great part of my life. God bless you all, Virginia." So, this was a statement she made in the hospital, being badly bruised by that car accident, by the bus. We still don't know anything about that incident. Um, but they told her she only had days to live. Well, according to this, they released her days after. So, none of this makes sense. None of this makes sense. That Virginia Giuffre had a car crash, told she only had days to live, had this huge amount of kidney failure. Her brother comments and says that this is not related to a car crash. This has to be something else. The doctors are telling her she has a short time to live, and they released her from the hospital days after. So this is April 8th. So this is a few weeks ago. Um, and recently, this really exemplifies more of this scandal. Virginia Giuffre, who accused Prince Andrew and Jeffrey Epstein of sexual abuse and trafficking, found dead at 41. So you had the bus crash at the beginning of the month, just weeks prior to this. He had just a few days to live, according to the doctors. They released her out of hospital, and then just a short week after, they found her dead. According to the CBC, she advocated for sex trafficking survivors after emerging as a key figure in Epstein's prolonged downfall. So the woman who accused Prince Andrew and other influential men of sexual exploiting her as a teenager, trafficked by disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein, has died. She was 41. Virginia Giuffre died from, we'll say, self-deletion. Friday at her farm in Western Australia, her publicist confirmed. Deeply loving, wise, and funny, she was a beacon to other survivors and victims, publicist Dinny Von Mufflin said in a statement. She adored her children and many animals. She was always more concerned with me than with herself. I will miss her beyond words. It was a privilege of a lifetime to represent her. The American-born Giuffre, who lived in Australia for years, became an advocate for sex trafficking survivors after emerging as central figure in Epstein's prolonged downfall. Epstein, the wealthy, well-connected New York money manager, died by self-deletion in August 2019 in a New York jail while awaiting trial on U.S. federal sex trafficking charges involving dozens of teenage girls and young women, some as young as 14. The charges come 14 years after police in Palm Beach, Florida, first began investigating allegations that he sexually abused underage girls who were hired to give him massages. How insidious that is. 14 years. So that would have been what, 2007? That first allegation came out. So since 2007, they've known about Jeffrey Epstein. The police knew about this, but they've been doing this tap dance, tiptoe around, beating around the bush, because they don't know if they want to convict this guy because of how well connected he is. This is a ritzy financier that has a lot of connections with very powerful figures. And the police just tiptoed around this case for 14 years. Until 2019, where they finally arrested him in his New York Manhattan apartment. Giuffre came forward publicly after the initial investigation ended in an 18-month Florida jail term for Epstein, who made a secret deal to avoid federal prosecution by pleading guilty instead to relatively minor state-level charges of soliciting prostitution. He was released in 2009. Again, just shows the disgust, the sickening, the behind closed doors insidiousness of this. In subsequent lawsuits, Giuffre said she was a teenage spa attendant at Mar-a-Lago. Keep that in mind. She worked at Mar-a-Lago when she was recruited by Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, who were frequent guests at Mar-a-Lago. So every time that Trump's been accused of being Jeffrey Epstein's best friend and Trump goes on the stage and says, I don't know him that well. I don't know him that well. I've heard of him, but I don't know him that well. That's complete bullcrap. That is complete bullcrap. Donald Trump, like the Clintons, like a lot of people, know who Jeffrey Epstein is. As George Carlin says, it's a big giant club and you and I ain't in it. So this is all documented. Uh, when she was approached in 2000 by Epstein's girlfriend and later employee Ghislaine Maxwell. Giuffre said Maxwell hired her as a masseur for Epstein, but the couple effectively made her a sexual servant, pressuring her into gratifying not only Epstein, but his friends and associates. Giuffre said she was flown around the world for assignments or assassination with men, including Prince Andrew, when she was 17 and 18. The men denied it and assailed Giuffre's credibility. They acknowledged changing some of the key details of her account, including the age at which she first met Epstein. But many parts of their story were supported by documents, witness testimony, and photos, including one of her and Andrew with his arm around her bare midriff in Maxwell's London townhouse. Giuffre said in one of her lawsuits, that she had sex with the royal 3 times in London during her 2001 trip, at Epstein's New York mansion when she was 17 years old, and in the Virginia Islands when she was only 18. Giuffre, born Virginia Roberts, told interviewers that her childhood was shattered when she was sexually abused as a grade schooler by a man her family knew. She later ran away from home and endured more abuse, she said. So that's obviously highlighting uh, trauma from her childhood. And I know people, when this first came out, when this first got released, there was a lot of people clapping back and saying that, well, why did this young teenager go with this financier? Why did this young child got swept up by Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein? And what it has now been revealed, but didn't beforehand, was that then Virginia Roberts had childhood trauma. She left her family. She was kind of on her own. She then got, had a job at Mar-a-Lago. She was like a spa attendant there. And that's where she met Jeffrey Epstein, Ghislaine Maxwell, who gave her false promises. And that's what happens to a lot of these business ventures, these uh, kind of deviant people, this pedophile culture, that you have powerful people that recruit these young women, expressing that, hey, if you come with me, you'll get a modeling contract, you'll be on a TV show, we'll get you business deals, you'll have a music career, giving them false hope. And as a young child, not thinking of the greater outcome, not thinking of the longevity of it, are going to accept it. And they get sucked into this, and then unfortunately, this happens. And it's sickening, it's disgusting. And the fact that a lot of people, like I said, Trump knows about this, Clintons know about this, a lot of people know about this. She said she met her now husband in 2002 while taking massage training in Thailand at Epstein's behest. She married, moved to Australia, and had a family. Last month, Giuffre's publicist said she had been hospitalized after a serious accident. She didn't answer questions about the date, location, nature, or other specifics of the accident, or about the actuary of an Instagram post that appeared to come from Giuffre on Sunday, saying she had been in a car that was hit by a school bus and that her prognosis was dire. So this is just insane in suspicion. And here's the Daily Mail even pointing this. Daily Mail says Virginia Giuffre's cryptic social media posts in the days before her tragic death by self-deletion. And this is raising a whole bunch of eyebrows. This is raising so much of this, because the real conspiracy I could point to is not the fact that she died from self-deletion. That doesn't seem the case. We kind of know that that's made up, that something definitely was done to her, that they were trying to silence her for good. My biggest conspiracy is why now? Why after Epstein's gone, Ghislaine Maxwell is supposedly detained, all this information has become out. Everyone's now aware about the scandal of the Epstein Island and everything has been reported. Why all of a sudden that now they decide to completely wipe her out? That's my big conspiracy of this. I feel is going to go unanswered. So Virginia Giuffre shared a series of cryptic social media posts in the weeks leading up to her unexpected self-deletion. Giuffre, 41, who has trafficked by the late American pedophile Jeffrey Epstein as a teenager, sparked a social media firestorm in March when she shared a photo of herself battered and bruised, claiming she was dying after being hit by a school bus. On Friday, just weeks after a string of mysterious public posts, her family tragically announced that she had died by self-deletion in near Gabby, Australia, where she had been living for several years. In a statement, her family said she lost her life to self-deletion after being a lifelong victim of sexual abuse and sex trafficking. Virginia was a fierce warrior, and in the fight against sexual abuse and sex trafficking, she was the light that lifted so many survivors, it added. And here's even more to this. So here's one of the posts that was highlighted before this incident. So again, this kind of confirms that the self-deletion was not a possibility. That something was definitely done to her. And she kind of was aware of this because why would she post this message here? I am making it publicly known that in no way, shape, or form am I self-deleted. I have made this known to my therapist and GP. If something happens to me in the sake of my family, do not let this go away and help me to protect them. Too many evil people want to see me quieted. That was days before it was announced that she died. So this really confirms that something was up. That something was tied to that school bus crash, that her doctors, there's had to be some sort of involvement to that. That they told her that she only had days to live and she got out of the hospital, and then weeks later they found her dead. Something had to happen. But again, my suspicion, my question into this is why now? Why after everything that got released? Why did they decide after everyone's well aware of this and now we're kind of building momentum not just on Epstein, but also to other individuals that are accused, the P. Diddy parties, like all the other scandals that are a part of this. Why would they chose now to silence her out? That's the big mystery. That's the big dilemma. That is its own conspiracy, far beyond than just that. It's just more to more information to dive into to this. So obviously, this broke a lot of news in the alternative media sphere and individual podcasts and whatnot. But a lot of attention also went to Don Jr., Donald Trump Jr., who quote tweeted this guy breaking the news, and he says, "Oh, come on. Other than the Clintons, no one has done more self-deleting going on." But what's interesting is that Don Jr., yes, he points the finger at the Clintons, and he knows how well the Clintons are connected to someone like Jeffrey Epstein, just like the Bidens, just like Obama's, just like a lot of politicians. But Don Jr. and much of the MAGA crowd seem to forget that Donald Trump was part of that crowd, part of that group, part of that gang. And while they knew about this, they were still trying to promote Here's Lives of TikTok, falsifying the idea that Trump was going to release the Epstein client list. And people bought into this. People thought that maybe this is some sort of measure. Maybe this is some sort of, comeback or trying to go after the deep state. This is kind of like a gotcha moment that we're going to finally release the Epstein client list if elected. The Democratic elites are shaking. So they false this promise to people. They falsify this promise of saying, oh, if he gets in, he's going to release those papers. And he keeps telling people that, oh, any day now, Pam Bondi's on it. At some point, we're going to release these documents. At some point, it's going to happen. And guess what? It never did. It never did. And what they've released is just minuscule. Is a tiny, tiny, tiny little portion to all the information that they do have on the Epstein client list. And why would they not release all the Epstein client list? Because their own people, like Trump, are involved in this. And here's ANCAP Air reminding us that never forget who Trump is friends with. He was friends with Jeffrey Epstein, who committed self-deletion during Trump's first term. Virginia Giuffre was recruited by Ghislaine Maxwell while she worked at Mar-a-Lago. That's Trump's little beachfront. That's Trump's base in Florida. She worked there. She knew the Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell were frequent guests there. Virginia committed self-deletion during Trump's second term. And here's some photos here to show people. There's Donald Trump with Jeffrey Epstein. There they are being buddy-buddy. There's them standing together. Oh, look how happy they are. And here's Donald Trump and the Clintons. Clintons at Donald Trump's wedding. Do you see how all interconnected it is? Do you see how it's all one giant sludge? Do you see how Trump is no different than the worst of the swamp? Do you see how this is all a giant club and you and I ain't in it? And that's why they refuse to release documents relating to the Epstein victims and the client list. Because they know they're just as guilty as the Democrats. They're just as guilty. And here's proof of it. Here's proof that Miss Giuffre worked at Mar-a-Lago as a locker room attendant for the spa area. Records produced in this case identified the date of employment as 2000, and she recalled being there for the summer. Miss Giuffre previously attempted to gather employment records from Mar-a-Lago. She earned approximately $9 per hour. The address is 1100 South Ocean Boulevard, Palm Beach, Florida. Telephone number, blah, blah, blah. But she worked there. So Trump knew about who Jeffrey Epstein was. They know each other. They knew what was going on. So Trump can't play innocent. Trump can't play this, I don't know who the guy is. I don't know who the guy is. I've heard him by name. He can't play that card. Especially knowing the fact that she was working at Mar-a-Lago. Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell were frequent guests there. And they actively recruited her. They took an employee of Mar-a-Lago off to their island to train that person, to train that young teenager to become a sex worker involved in sex trafficking. And you're telling me Donald Trump doesn't know about that? BS. Complete BS. And that's why now he's doing cover. So a reporter, this is Shadow Vezra pointing this out, a reporter came up to Trump and asked about this. Says President Trump comments on Epstein victim Virginia Giuffre's self-deletion story, calling it a very sad situation. Trump says she is not the only one, adding there are other victims connected to the same tragic situation. Well, here's what he said. And just listen to how empty, how vague this is. Listen to this.
Do you have a reaction to Virginia Giuffre's suicide in Australia?
Well, it's a very sad situation, the whole thing. That whole situation is very sad, her and others. And so certainly that's a horrible thing. Horrible.
That's all he could say. The sad situation. Horrible thing. I heard about it from one of my golf buddies. I asked what happened to her. And they said, don't worry about it. That's all he has. That's all he has. He knows he's not going to call this out. He knows he's not going to call us out because he knows his handlers, the people that bought and ran his campaign, and Jeffrey Epstein's connections know that he can't speak about this. He can't investigate. He can't get Cash Patel to look into this. He knows because he's bought out. He's bought out by this cartel. So that's why he's going to make a vague, empty gesture of, it's very sad. Very sad. Very sad she died. And not make any questions, not make any accounts to the fact that this is a woman just prior to this got involved in a school bus crash, told she only had days to live, got out of the hospital, knows that they're actively engaged in hurting her, and has recently announced been dead. You don't think that's all suspicious? You don't think that's all in need of investigation? That's an American-born citizen. But Trump doesn't care. Trump doesn't care because he's told not to care. Because he knows if he says something about it, that's further targeting by the deep state, by the people that control him. So if you think Trump was some sort of outsider going against the deep state, oh boy, you are wrong. Oh boy, you are wrong. I do like he changes MAGA hat to white. Went from red to white. I'm guessing it's symbolic to his immigration policies. You get the picture. But it just raises more suspicions. Again, the biggest scandal of all this, outside of the supposed self-deletion, we already know that's complete crap. But the big scandal that I'm still contemplating, and this is going to wrap my brain the more I hear about this story, is why now? Why did they choose now to eliminate her? Why all of a sudden now? Like what was the big mystery that they're still trying to cover up? After everything that's been revealed, after people already know about Epstein, they already know about Ghislaine Maxwell, they know about the island, they know about other victims. And who's to say other victims are not just going to amplify their voices? Not just her, there's other people that have spoken out. But that is wild. That is crazy. That is wild. And honestly, it should scare people. It should scare people to know that even in a free society, or what you think is a free society, you're still being controlled. You're still being controlled. And it's even more daunting when you have dirt on powerful figures and they want to keep you silent. I've seen a lot of mafia movies in my day. I'm a mafia film savant, if you will. And I know how the story goes that if a gang, if a certain mafia crowd, if a certain mob boss wants to, move forward on a certain project, that he's going to have to eliminate people that are in his way. And it usually starts off by discrediting them or making up a scandal or trying to throw them away from the public eye, maybe do some harassment here and there. But then at some point, it's sleeping with the fishes. And that's what it seems like to me. Seems like the mafia wanted to keep her silent for good. They're afraid that maybe she'll speak out more. But why? Why now? Why after everything that's been revealed? I just don't understand why they chose at this moment to wipe her off the earth. I just don't understand.